Okay, hello everybody. My name is Dr. Tom DeMaria, and I'm with the National Center for School Crisis and Bereavement and also the Coalition to Support Grieving Students. It's an honor to be able to present to you tonight on a topic that's relevant as a parent myself, taking care of yourself and keeping calm as a parent while your child is in crisis. So we're going to cover a lot today, and I'll try to monitor the chat room. If you have questions from talking too quickly, or if you want me to go over something, I'll try to get to that at the end. I'll try to get through the presentation to make sure everybody has a chance to kind of pick up what I'm going to be telling you guys tonight. But again, an honor to be talking to you tonight. The first thing, as a parent and being through some bouncy times with children, because they always seem to come up with a new way to challenge you, is I've learned that you have to start first by being a positive role model. It's really important because so many times, and I felt it too, when things are going wrong, you feel like the boat's sinking and you're screaming and yelling and bailing. But what happens then in a crisis is you just make the crisis work, and it makes it a lot harder for you. I know it's hard to take a breath when it seems like everything's going on, but the more you can stay calm, the more you can be in control. I learned this years ago, working in a hospital and being in an emergency room. I noticed that the EMTs and the firemen would bring people in and they wouldn't run in. They would walk really slow. And I would say, "Whoa, why are you walking so slow? We got to save these people." And they said, "By running, I upset the people, I upset the hospital staff, and I could make a mistake." So I've learned, be calm. First thing you need to do is take that breath. And no matter what your child says to you while you're trying to navigate the crisis, try to just listen, try to accept. And we'll go through more controls. But model, and this is really what you want to try to do for your child if they are in crisis, is being calm and in control as much as you can. And to do that, you got to make sure you take care of yourself. We'll save a little bit of that for the end, and to regulate your own feelings and behaviors, because oftentimes when they're in crisis, your kids are not at their best, and they're going to be giving you a little attitude sometimes or giving you a little bit of hard time. So really important that you kind of make sure you keep your feelings in check, you stay calm, and that's really the start of it. So what defined a crisis? Well, what defines a crisis is something that you didn't prepare for, kind of gets sprung at you. It's never good timing. There's never good timing for a crisis, because if a crisis is kind of coming, you kind of prepare for it, and then it's not a crisis. It's just difficult things to handle. But oftentimes kids will bring up from small to big, from having to do a assignment that's due in an hour when they leave to school, to kids are bullying me at school, to I don't know if I want to go to school anymore, to this other boy and I did something that I'm kind of embarrassed to tell you, that those type of things get sprung on you. And again, the first step to do is listen first, talk later. And that's really important. But let's walk into crisis management kind of at first. The first thing is you got to start to think, that's when you're listening to your child. You got to kind of make sure you kind of gauge to yourself, what are the questions you're asking to yourself? The first one is this a new or repeated concern? Is this something you've heard before? What started this? What really got this going? What information do you have to work with? Because sometimes, and I find most of the times, I don't know all the answers. People will ask me questions. Well, how do you handle this crisis? I said, yeah, I kind of get worried when I don't know all the information, but eventually when I start to hear more and learn what I have to work with, I realized, number four, I need to find information from other sources. I need to call the school. I need to call the coach, the pastor, whoever I'm dealing with. Sometimes you just need more information before you really can start to decide how to best help your child through this crisis. This is the one that causes the anxiety, is how quickly do you need to act? Is there risk-taking going on? Is the child talking about anything that's scary? Is there talking about death or violence or anything else going on right now? These are all things that are really very important, because they will require you to do something really quickly and not take your time. So how quickly do you need to act is always what you're listening for, because you want to make sure that if it's a crisis situation, you act upon it, you don't delay. And we'll talk some of the things that get in the way of that. Ask your child what they expect to want as a result of the conversation. Sometimes we think we know what they want by telling you this horrible thing, but sometimes all they want you to do is listen. sometimes with my own children, they bring a problem to me and they say, Dad, you're really great. You really helped me see through it. All I just did was just listen and just kind of maybe ask some questions, but not really tell them what to do anything. I kind of help them solve the problem themselves if I can, but find out from the child if they want this grand wisdom that we often have. And we'll talk a little bit more about letting them try to solve the problem with our support rather than giving it can sometimes be very helpful, but ask them what they expect from telling you all this stuff. This is the hard one, and this requires a little humility and self-examination, is you got to kind of ask yourself, am I part of the problem? Is it about me? Is it about something I did, something I did or said, or is it something that I put the child in a situation that's caused them a lot of difficulty? For example, if you say, I want you to try to, do extra work in school, but the teacher says you're doing too much work and you're not doing extracurricular activities, and the child is stressed out because they have to be at band class or the football team, whatever they're on, and they're supposed to study a lot and you're making them stressed out. Well, you're part of the problem. So it's good to know that from the get-go. This one's really important because you listen, obviously, with your ears, but you have to kind of listen with your eyes. Does your child sound, appear, act differently than he or she usually does? And you always got to consider, dealing with middle school these days and high school kids, is there a substance abuse issue going on? Is my son depressed? Am I just not seeing it? Do they fall into a deep depression? Especially if you're dealing with a teen who's just broken up with their boyfriend or girlfriend, that can prompt this very serious depression, and you got to take that very seriously. And we'll talk more about that. And finally, you have to ask, do you need outside or professional support? And do you have access to resources? Do you have somebody that can talk to your child? Obviously, if it's a crisis, you can bring them to a hospital emergency room, but outside of the crisis, who do you go to? And oftentimes a school can be a great resource to let you know who's out there. And after all that's over with, you got to ask yourself, well, how was it? How did it go? And you ask yourself this, ask your child, and did anything come out of this? Or my child just wanted to share? And did I set up a time to follow up with the child? And again, these are things that, again, we'll cover throughout the presentation, but it's important to kind of sort out basically that there's a lot of things that you need to think about. It's not as simple as tell me what's going on. You have to kind of think about all these questions. So now I'm going to give you some tools. The first step, and it's really important, is watch out for the stop signs. So before you say anything, you got to kind of sort these out a little bit. The first one is your personal reactions. Dad, I think my girlfriend's might be pregnant. Right away, you want to say a lot of things, but you got to pull it back and say, wow, son, that's a lot to handle. Maybe you can share a little bit more about why you think so, or tell me what's going on, rather than, you stupid jerk, what happened? Didn't you both take precaution? Blah, 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 blah. The feelings are coming up and the mouth starts talking, but the brain has to kind of slow it down and say, let me hold on to my feelings. It's okay to share that I'm a little bit, but don't let it all out, because then the child will shut down. It's a different conversation. Don't be afraid you'll be causing your child pain if he, she, or they talk about what really bothers them, because they're approaching you, or you're approaching them about it. And you didn't cause the pain. The pain's there. You're just giving them an opportunity to put it into words. And by putting it to words, believe it or not, can help a lot of children get out of their crisis. Some parents desire to protect their child, so you fix it for them. You're having a problem, I'll take care of it. I'll call the teacher. I'll call the parents of the kid who's giving you a hard time. I'll buy you new sneakers. Well, you're not teaching the child that old expression, how to fish. You're catching the fish for them. They need to learn how to be independent. Believe it or not, the goal of parenting is to teach your children step by step to take care of their own lives and be independent. The goal of parenting is not to have children living with you forever, although that's maybe nice in some ways. It's also nice to see them walk on their own and leave the nest themselves. Some parents, though, and I bet we know one or two of them, that they can't believe that their kid could ever be in that sort of problem. They don't believe the warning signs they're seeing. It's not my child. My child wouldn't do that. My child has morals. My child has good judgment. My child is the star of their team, or a bright student. They would never be caught cheating. They would never be caught doing something that's, kids do things because they don't know, because their brain's not fully all there. And sometimes their drives and their urges and their friends, because they haven't figured out good friends from bad friends, they get themselves in situations that are not so good. So Yes, it can happen to every family. I don't know a family around who's not had children who've had some bumps and bruises along the way of growing up. So just be aware that that could happen too. Allowing simple solutions, blaming somebody. Yeah, it's that kid you're hanging out with. Okay, you're not going to hang out with that kid, and that's the problem's going to be all over. Well, that's kind of too simple. Life, as we all know, is a bit complicated. And just saying it's one person's fault, well, what that does is it simplifies the solution. Let them talk. Let them talk. The next one is a stop sign to conversations as you keep bringing up, well, you said this and you said that and you said, well, if you keep doing that, they're going to shut up. They're not going to want to talk. You got to let them talk. You can store it in your brain, but don't stop them. Don't force them to not keep sharing. If you don't talk with them, you're allowing others to be primary source of information about coping for your children. And they'll turn to peers, especially teens, turn to their peers for information. They get all the wisdom from their peers. They turn to social media. So you're letting social media, which can be anybody in the world with whatever motives, give them the information they need, or their peers who are just as young and immature and not as skilled as they are. So you should be the one. So realize you got to let them talk, you got to let them speak, and you got to give them that time. Try not to minimize their concerns, tell them it's not serious, or try not to force them too much. If they're not ready to share, say, I'm here for you, I'm ready to listen. It might be hard, but I'm always here for you. But don't force them if they're not really fully ready, but give them time, wait them out a little bit. Don't think your child is just overreacting. It is just teenage drama. Unfortunately, I've worked with a number of families where they thought their daughter was overreacting to some of the hazing and some of the teasing that she was getting at school, and she was just being a drama queen. And I've worked with children brought into the emergency room for taking overdoses. So sadly, everything that a child believes, however small it is to us, is big to them. It's realizing that we have experience in this thing called wisdom they're supposed to get as we get older, but kids don't have that yet. Even the smallest thing to them can be a big deal. And if you minimize it, they'll think you don't want to listen. Don't believe the problem will disappear or be resolved by itself. Most problems fester and get worse. They don't just disappear. And don't believe that the child's never going to get into trouble because they know that you love him, her, or them. Kids need to hear that a lot, even those pesky adolescents. They need to hear it. There's no end to how much you need to tell them that, including people that you're living with, your spouses or your partners. They need to hear it too, but kids need to hear it a lot too. Don't ever assume that you can't say that enough. One parent I worked with once told me that I let my child know that I've already heard this from them and they have to learn to be a man or make a decision and take care of themselves. Doesn't fix anything. It shames the child, and the child's really being told by you that you're a closed door, don't deal with you. And that's really not very helpful. You want them to share even the stuff that they may not want to tell you. You'd rather hear it from them than to find out from somebody else that they're in trouble. Some parents come across as know-it-alls, and you hate to do it, but I handled this type of crisis when I was your age, and I handled it, and everything went well, and you have to kids don't like speeches. They really, really don't. They like to hear you listen to them, but they don't like to hear you tell them. Even if you know the answer, again, listen first, and that's really very important. So let's talk about a lot of things I've already mentioned to you as how to talk with our children, really challenge. And I always try to provide the open door analogy, and you tell your children, but a lot of times the door gets closed because I'm distracted or because I'm angry or tired or hungry, or there's a good sports game on television, and it's not an open door then. So it could be in the middle of the Super Bowl. If my son and daughter came to me and says, Dad, I'd like to talk to you about something, I turn the TV off. I don't say, wait till halftime, or I'm busy right now, I'll talk to you later tonight. Opportunities don't come that way. It's always inconvenient. It never can be at a good time. It could be when you're in the car packing, ready to go on vacation. It's always never at a good time. So appreciate that. If you could have an open door, then it's full access reasonably, but not access that's limited by anything. If you show them when they approach you, because it takes a lot of courage to approach a parent and say, I have a problem, because kids obviously want to please you and they know they don't want to get your reactions. They're always, especially little ones, always afraid you're going to reject them. So you gotta, when they come, make that a priority for you. And you got to invite the conversation. You tell me what's bothering you. Let's talk. And that's what's most important. Again, as I mentioned before, and it's kind of a theme, listen first and ask questions later. Don't be the reporter who asks 10,000 questions. Let them speak. Really, really important. Kids want to be heard. Listen to what they say. And again, listen not just with your eyes, but with your eyes, your ears, and see all that the child's presenting to you. And check back with them, follow up and said, thanks so much for sharing. It sounds like a tough situation. Can we talk maybe tomorrow, follow up? We talked about a lot. You really told me a lot. Can we talk about that tomorrow? That's helpful because the child realizes that even if they didn't want to say anything or didn't know things, talking to you might open up doors that they can kind of speak to later on. And that could be very helpful for them. Again, listen first, remove all distractions when speaking to them, let them share all their feelings without judgment. Ask your child how they're doing and what's happening in your world. It's a great question. You know, my son or daughter would come home from school when they were younger. I would get the complete story about what happened today, who they sat with, who took their crayons, what things the teacher said that made them laugh. As you get older, it gets less and less. That open door kind of gets less. So during dinner, or maybe watching TV, I turn off and I say, okay, son, you know, tell me what's going on in your world. What's happening in your world? And they got used to that. Basically, they would share that they had a thought that was interesting. They watched something that was interesting. Someone said something that's interesting. It's a good habit to just get the children used to just sharing with you and show you're a good listener. It's a great way to parent. And thank them. Thanks for teaching me about your world. I don't understand all the things that are in your world. Thanks for sharing that a lot with me. I really appreciate that. Again, it can be very helpful for kids to kind of, be able to share and, learn that you're thanking them. You're thanking them for letting you do your job in a better way. Follow their cues. Say things like, tell me more about that. I'd love to understand more about what it's like for you. Again, kids just want to tell you, they want to share as much as they can, and hearing that you're genuinely interested, wow, that's really great. By the way, for people that are in relationships, that's a great thing to tell your partner too. People say that's the greatest way to get people to feel they like you, is to listen and be a good listener. So remember that, follow their cues. Tell me more. Listen even when your child is not talking. Watch how they behave. Watch for major changes in your child's sleep patterns, appetite, school performance, social activities, and preoccupations, especially if it's about death and dying and dark themes. You want to make sure that you listen to that and try to encourage, validate, acknowledge, and accept your child's feelings. I'm angry. No, you're not angry. I've heard parents, when I've had family sessions, say, no, you're not angry. You're just anxious. Well, you just really stepped on the kid's feelings. Not a good way for the kid to feel he's feeling safe enough to share things with you. So again, listen more, talk less. A great, simple, but really effective strategy for parents. Respond to questions is the next category. Understand what your child is really asking. Oftentimes, and we know this, they don't really ask you first what they really want to know. They ask you a general question, and you got to follow up those questions and realize that children cope better when they have an understanding of why they feel the way they feel. By talking through, it's kind of how therapy works. Oftentimes as a therapist, I don't have to be brilliant. I just have to be able to get people to talk and get them to share, get them to kind of sort it out themselves. Because believe it or not, when you talk, you kind of organize your thinking a little bit. It kind of helps you realize what's bothering you more. And that's a lot of how therapy works, that it helps people to be with somebody who really will listen and not tell them what to do all the time. So we want to jump in and problem solve all the time. And sometimes we just got to let the person talk a little bit and help them find the answers. When you get asked questions, though, sometimes you get that curveball that you can't really answer pretty much. And the rule is tell as much as you know about the truth. Silence and whispers create doubt. When you don't, well, that's something you should know. Well, if you do that, that gets the children frightened. If you don't talk about things, it might be things that you feel uncomfortable talking. You can say, listen, it's hard to talk to you about this, but here's what I know about so-and-so who died, or here's what I know about what's going on in our town, or here's what I know about that teacher that was let go, or here's what I know. It doesn't help to say that's nothing you should know. That's adult business only. Obviously, if it's a young child, you gear the conversation to your level. But the more you don't tell the child, the more the child will think something's worse than it actually is sometimes. And sometimes telling them a truth is a lot better than trying to not to tell them, because then they think that you're hiding something even bigger. Like, you and mommy were fighting the other day. What went on? If a non-truth would be, oh, that's none of your business. That's parent business. Well, you don't want to share intimate details about what you and your wife or partner were talking about, but you can say, adults sometimes disagree, and mom and I had a disagreement about something, and sometimes we got a little loud. We didn't mean it to get so loud, but that's kind of what went down. Doesn't mean anything else is happening beside mommy and daddy now have to follow up, talk about what got us all upset, and we'll work it out. And if it's something that concerns you, right on, we'll bring it right to you. Adjust what you share based on the age and past experience of your child. And there'd be questions as a parent you can't answer. You don't have to be the grand knowledgeable person of the world. You can say, I don't know, let me find out. I don't really know all the issues. And I think that's helpful, because kids these days, when you think you know all the answers, will be on the internet in 5 seconds, and they'll find ways that you're wrong. And what happens then as a parent is you start to lose credibility, because they start to think, oh, this guy will give me things that are not true. Better to say, listen, let me find out more. I only know this much. Let me help you. I think honesty is really helpful, and also shows children you're not the grand knowledgeable person of the universe, that they can help you find. Let's discover that together. Let's figure this out, son. Or daughter. Let's kind of sort this out. Maybe we can figure it out together. But I don't have an answer right away to why these type of things happen. A big factor is adjust expectations. Remember, I said sometimes children will have an issue that you don't think is big, that's big for them. Well, sometimes children will deny that it's a big issue because they don't want to get you upset. They don't want to disappoint you. They don't want to hurt your feelings. They don't want you to think less of them. And they'll deny it. So you have to kind of say, okay, they're denying it, but let me keep them talking. And younger children may want to focus on safety, and they may act a little bit younger because they're worried about being safe. Teenagers, when you talk to them, they may appear selfish, blame you, use anger, or be confrontational. So you got to realize that that's okay. That's just that they're practicing having those independence-oriented emotions. And obviously they know a lot more than you, and they're a lot smarter than you, but that's okay. That's all them trying to be adults. But they're still kids, but they're trying to be adults. I like to think of teenagers as really children in adult-looking bodies, but they're really still children trying to really learn about their emotions, and you can't take the bait. That's really important. And accept the fact that teenagers will want to talk more with their friends than you. So when they teenager will talk to you, that's a big deal, because they've already talked to their friends, Mary, Susan, Bill, Bob, whoever. They've talked to them before they talk to you. So realize that if they talk to you, that's something really special, and you need to be a good listener for sure. So after you have this conversation, you thank them again and for sharing, and praise them for being open with you, and try to help them sort out their feelings. That's a good way to kind of gauge, because a lot of times children mislabel feelings. We'll talk about that in a little while too. How to help them understand that fear and anger are a little different, and grief is oftentimes misdiagnosed as depression sometimes, and you have to help them kind of sort that out a little bit. If you can, help them sort out all their needs. Some kids are anxious, want to be in control. Some kids are fearful, want to be safe. Some children who've taken a risk and it hasn't worked out want to be protected and become very dependent. Find out what the underlying beliefs are and what needs to happen. And it's not a bad thing to do to link recovery and resilience to your family, your culture, and your faith-based values. Every family, every culture has a set of values that can be very protective, and say, listen, what you're saying is really important, and in our faith we believe, or in our culture we believe, or part of my family heritage believes. You're not preaching them, you're not telling them what to do, but you can share that what they're doing is part of that tradition. It helps them feel that they're part of something larger. And finally, help them at the end suggest positive actions and a plan they can do to help themselves with the situation. Sometimes the plan is to talk more about it. Sometimes the plan will be to take a little step and to see how it does. Do these little experiments. Listen, I don't know, but this seems to be a way, something you can try. Why don't you try it out? Let's regroup and you can tell me how that worked out for you. You don't have to have the ultimate plan, but you can encourage some steps with them. Most importantly, though, and I think it's something that we all need to feel, certainly after getting through the pandemic, we needed to keep on to hope. And I think it's really important to have that hope for our children and incorporate that in whatever we can tell them. Not false hope, but hope is really important. And part of that is oftentimes we think that everything is going to be bad. We're pretty bad fortune tellers. And most of the things that we predict don't come true. And that's how people get caught on gambling. Certainly the weather. I'm not picking on weather broadcasters, but you can't tell a week or two ahead of time what the weather's going to be. There's too many things that could happen. And certainly I've learned about when my favorite sports teams lose, you can't follow predictions in terms of sports. So most of the things that I'm certain that are going to happen don't happen. And kids need to realize that they're not people with a magical crystal ball that they can see in the future. Most things that we worry about don't happen. And most things we worry about sometimes, are not as bad as we thought, which is the next thing. We often imagine the worst and most negative possible, which is not really possible. I often use the example of people are terrified of going in the water and being eaten by a shark. There are people that are attacked by sharks, but there are billions of people in the world swimming at those sharks, and not as many as we think, get attacked by sharks. So if we think about it, and it seems awful, we think it's more probable, but not. It's possible, but really not probable. And this could give children a hope and a more optimism that they'll get through this. And explain to them how overcoming a problem and coping with difficult times often makes people stronger. It really does. And I know this is hard for your son. I know this is really difficult, but if we work on this together, you'll learn skills and things about you. I'm learning about how strong you are and brave you are to share this with me. We'll get through this together. It's a nice message to let the child know they're not alone in terms of facing this. Oftentimes children in crisis get this kind of tunnel vision where they only see one answer ahead of them. And that's kind of scary. And that's why you got to help them see that there's other things around them that they have to do. And that's why problem solving is really important. It's a great skill that I use, and I use with my children. And I'm not saying I'm a model parent. I've struggled too sometimes, but sometimes when children come to you with a problem, they don't see that there's another solution. They just think that A is going to lead to B, this is going to lead to C, this is going to lead to D, and oftentimes no. And a great thing is, okay, you're predicting that you're going to fail the test. Okay, but what are alternatives? You might just do average. You might be able to do extra credit. You might be able to pull an upset. The teacher might give you an easy test. You don't know really the source of the test. So you're trying to get them to see that there's other solutions and other things beside than what they predict, and also other behaviors that they engage in. For example, if you go to school tomorrow and that kid who picks on you is there, what might be other ways you're handling it besides running away, hiding in the bathroom, running for a teacher? Oh, those are possibilities, but what else can you do? Can you try saying hello, being with friends? Could you, more confidently, not look like you're going to be victimized? Maybe that would help. It may not, but it's worth a shot. And with any solutions they generate, you think about the advantages and disadvantages of whatever solution they're going to try. What are the cost benefits? What are the pros or cons? Whoops. It's really very helpful because they begin to learn that there's no simple answer. There's no simple solution. Again, that's a theme too. Life's too complex. And oftentimes problems change when you're in this situation. You have to be able to sort out other solutions. And the more flexible and adaptive people don't break with the wind. The tree bends, but doesn't break. Another great thing to tell your children when they're stuck with that tunnel vision, they only see there's one course or one action to take, is what would someone else say? What's a different perspective on the situation? And oftentimes, what would your friends say about it? What would somebody else say about it? Again, it can help them get out of their focus and help them try to see alternatives to what they're looking at. Another great part of problem solving is just work on one problem at a time. Oftentimes, children present you with 20 different problems, 20 different crises. Let's work on the one that's most important to you. Let's see how we untangle that a little bit. Let's work to see how we go with that, and then we can go to the next step. Let's try to be simple. I often say I'm getting older. My mind doesn't work as quickly as you. I'm going to lose pace with you. Let's just take one step at a time. That's really important. And part of that, and it's interesting, kids lose a sense of time. They don't see that life progresses. There's a short, middle, and long-term consequences. And oftentimes they see that the consequences are going to be forever, and they don't see that there's a tomorrow, or they don't see there's like a middle ground. So for example, if a child doesn't make a sports team, okay, that's the short-term consequences, and that makes them sad. So they'll have to deal with that crisis. But they can see where they really want to be in that sports team, and they got to see if that really is really important to them. And maybe they have to train for 6 months or a year and work really hard and take a look and see if they're getting better. And maybe in the long term, they'll try out and they maybe not make the A team, but they'll make the B team. Again, help children see that there's life as a process, and you can't really, again, we're not fortune tellers. We can't really figure out what's going to happen, but give that children a sense of time and appreciate that if you're 14, 15, 12, 11, you don't have many years behind you. You really don't have that sense of time. Time is whatever happens in the moment, whatever happens tomorrow, but they don't have that future sense. Give them that sense that there's a future to this, that even though the impact may seem overwhelmed right now of whatever crisis you're in, give it some time. You'll find that things loosen up and it may create other opportunities from you, however difficult and sad that it appears right now. And reiterate, whether it's now, whether it's in 2 days, 3 months, or 6 years, I'll always be there for you. I'm your parent. I love you. I'll always be there for you. Really important to provide that also to them. Forgiveness is a tough one. It's all part of the whole process. And we're all imperfect. I'm imperfect. I'll admit the world's imperfect. We can see it on the news every day. And other people are imperfect. We all try. We all stumble along. We try to do the best we can and help the children realize that whatever crisis they got into, if it was due to one of their mistakes, okay, you made a mistake. We're all imperfect. And there's a difference between intentionally doing something and then the consequences of doing something. You had that firecracker and you didn't know it wasn't safe, and because you threw it against a car, the car window got broken. You didn't intend to do something bad. You didn't really realize it was that strong, but what do you learn from it? What's the takeaway? That's just a sign you made a mistake. How do you realize that, maybe if we talked about it, maybe I should have been more available to you to help you learn more about fireworks and et cetera. So you own some of the responsibility, they do, you share, but it's all about forgiving themselves, forgiving others who are just as imperfect as they are, learning from mistakes, and building a plan to make our future a little bit better. During crisis, again, we talked about you staying calm. Routines are really nice. Children in crisis like routines. They like dinner, at the same time. They like sort of a rhythm. Younger children during crisis, you always have to reassure them that they're safe. And families, believe it or not, will do relaxation exercises. They'll take long walks. They'll do some breathing exercise. They'll practice relaxation together, which can be helpful. And encourage, there's a variety of ways to handle feelings when they get troublesome for you, and share some of that and share some positive coping strategies that you've used. Some of them, and I know this is a hard list, I'll try to get through it for you. There's helpful and not so helpful problematic coping, problem solving, seeking information, thinking things in a different way, seeking understanding, releasing your feelings, exercise, accepting things, distraction, hobbies, use of our faith and beliefs, use of humor and laughter, relaxation, social support, fantasy, imagination, new learning and reading, all good ways to cope. Ways that don't really help and make the problem worse sometimes is worrying, avoidance, self-criticism, blaming others, wishful thinking, sarcasm, and cynicism, pretending issues don't exist, withdrawing from people, denying problems, alcohol or drug use, other addictive behaviors, risk-taking, or overdoing activity, overdoing things like overdoing pleasurable activities, overdoing diet and exercise, for example. People develop eating disorders that way. Again, those are not good ways of dealing with pressure and stress. They're more helpful ways. And you can share some of the ones that you've learned not to use, the problematic ones, and the helpful ones. Again, you want to be an imperfect but learning parent who've learned and can share some of that wisdom with your child. Some ways that as a family, you can relax is you can do focused breathing. You can do muscle relaxation exercises. This YouTube and other sources of the web have great videos you can use. You can exercise together. You can have family dances. You can use imagery together, especially if you've been on a nice vacation somewhere. You can imagine when we're by the water and we're looking at the ocean and the waves are coming in. That can help generate this kind of relaxing image with so much helping them simmer down. Another ways to relax is to have a pleasurable experience, taking a bath, listening to music. Meditation, prayer can be other ways, engaging in a hobby, yoga, tai chi, warmth, again, sunbathing, being outside in the warmth can be all helpful ways just to kind of help them simmer down a little bit if they're kind of having a crisis. If you need to calm them down a little bit if they're too stressed out. Children and adults don't do well with sorting out feelings. We don't sort out, and what children call as anger is really fear, and sometimes sadness is really anxiety. So helping children sort out what those feelings mean and what they mean for them and what they mean for you. And we all have some core basic feelings. The natural emotions include anger, anxiety, sadness, and happiness. Those are ones that our animal friends, we do, the whole world has, is we all have some degree of anger, anxiety, sadness, and happiness. And in small degrees, feelings are feedback. They're not such a bad thing for us. Again, feelings are just ways to help us understand when changes need to be made and whether we need to do things too. In high dosage, anger turns to rage, anxiety turns to terror, sadness turns to depression. So in high doses, they're a little bit more problematic, but every day we have a lot of emotions. It's just the ones that stay with us are the ones we have to be most concerned about. Now, manufactured emotions are not emotions we're born with. We have to develop them, like guilt, shame, regret, pride, mistrust. Those are things that we learn based on our experiences, and they can be unlearned. And we have to realize that the manufactured emotions, you can kind of shift and shape a little bit. And I think those are important for children to realize. And sometimes most of our feelings are a combination. And people out there, you can love your children sometimes, but also be angry at them, to be disappointed, and be worried for them. 4 different emotions you can have at the same time with your children. And that's how feelings usually are. There's never just one feeling. Nobody's ever 100% love, even your spouse or your partner. You love them 99%, but 1%, you might be a little frustrated by them. You might be a little annoyed by them. You might be a little worried for them. Again, teaching children about feelings can help them understand all these things that go on inside. And again, these are just facial expressions, exhausted, confused, ecstatic, guilty, sad, frustrated, hysterical, angry. Our emotions are often shown on our face, but oftentimes children don't understand them. And I think this is a feeling chart that you can get on the internet, but feelings are very complex, but they can really help children understand what trouble they're getting through and how to get through them. Now, I seem to be making this pretty easy, but I've worked with many a child or many adolescents who sat in my therapy room and stared at me with that look, that one look you get from a child when this is going to be a long session. And I've learned when working with children and adolescents and my own children how to handle boundary baits. In other words, where a child says, you should, well, they're the child, you're the parent. And why aren't you spending money this way? Well, that's mom and I's decision, not yours. Or you should be a better therapist. You should tell my parents that they're stupid. Well, that's my job to figure out, not yours. Again, there's baits, provocations. Some kids are really good at getting to us a little bit and making us upset, or distracting us, taking it another way. You do something and it's not very good. And you want to sit and talk with it. Oh, Dad, did you see the game the other night? Diversion. So you realize, yeah, it was a good game, but I'd like to get back to what we're talking about. Some kids are great volcanoes, I call them. They explode on you, and you gotta deal with the volcano and all the volcanic ash that's spewing all over the place. And you're like, okay, how do I deal with the volcano? Yeah, I'm not going to be provoked. I'm not going to give into it. Some kids, dump truck. I just dump all the stuff, like 20 problems at you at once. And again, as I mentioned before, you got to kind of say, okay, let's just take one problem at a time. We can't do the whole dump truck. Let's just do one problem at a time. Some children are robotic. I don't want to talk about it. Everything's fine. Well, you look unhappy. Don't tell me how I feel. Okay, I'm here for you. The door's open, and I can tell you that I'd like to help you. I'm a little worried about you, but it's up to you. When you feel ready, I'm here for you. Again, you want to soften the robot a little bit. Some children, like Pinocchio, tell a tall tale and will tell us lies. Surprise, they're learning to be adults, unfortunately. And adults lie too, but children will sometimes get us annoyed because you know they're lying or not telling the truth exactly. And if you catch them on that, then they'll learn to just tell bigger lies. For example, if your adolescent comes home and you say, what time you home last night? And they say 8 o'clock, and you know it was 9 o'clock. And you can say, okay, just to make sure that we're both on the same page with the curfew. It's 8 o'clock, right? Yeah, Dad, it's 8 o'clock. If you keep asking them questions that they don't want to answer, you'll keep getting lies. You learn to kind of take whatever they say with a little grain of salt if they are pressured into situations where they can't really be open and honest with you. You have to work harder as a parent so they will feel comfortable saying, Dad, yeah, I wasn't at 9 o'clock. I just lost track of time. I was at my friend's house. Okay, son, thanks for sharing. I appreciate that. But curfew's at 8 o'clock if you can make that. Versus you were in what time? You're going to get in trouble. You're not going to go out. The curfew now is 7 o'clock. You're not going out at that time. If you do that, they're going to lie to you. So oftentimes the lies that kids tell you are because the door's not open and they feel that you're going to be punishing them in some way. So I try to say, if they're lying, that means I'm not doing something right. Some kids are roller coaster rides, especially when all their hormones are coming into play. They go happy, then they're sad, and then they're angry, and then you just got to not buy into the emotions. Don't pull into the emotions. And you got to let the child have time to settle down where they can tell you, you can tell them, take a breath, let's do some relaxation exercises together, and then let's talk. And some kids are the turtle. They don't want to, unlike the robot who something's going on, but they're kind of angry and tense. The turtles, everything's fine. I don't want to talk about it. I'm so scared, but you can't tell, you have to get the turtle to feel relaxed enough. Okay, we have to talk about it, but can we take a walk together? Can we watch TV for a little while? You got to coax them out of their little shell a bit so they feel comfortable. Again, these are just some styles that kids get into, but again, patience, listening, and not letting your own emotions direct where the conversation going, really, really important. So I've talked about all these wonderful tips, and it's hard. It's really, really hard when a child provokes you or a child puts a situation in your lap when you're not really ready for it. It can be very stressful. And again, as I mentioned at the start of the presentation, never at a good time. It's always at a time when you got other stuff to do. But again, kids learn so much about their feelings. Kids learn so much about how to cope, how to handle situations, how to problem solve from you. And if you can teach them that you sort of got it together, you're imperfect, you're a work in progress. I keep telling my children, I'm a work in progress. I keep working and I'll learn from you. But here's what I do to cope and keep myself balanced. That will go a long way with kids too. And it's really, really very important. So I like to spend a little time for a few minutes, at least, on you guys, because you probably deserve it as parents. So self-care, really important. It involves the body, it involves sleep, it involves healthy eating, it involves overall wellness and taking care of your medical side of you too, and not neglecting your body. So the primary purposes of stress management is you want to decrease how much stress you got, how much adrenaline's floating around your system. So if you're always in a crisis, your goal is to, you can take on a lot, you can achieve a lot, you can strive for excellence, but you don't want to try for misery, And a lot of people just push themselves so much and just take on so much stress. And it's not really a good way to live a little bit. So your goal in life and a goal of self-care is, first step is to try to not get rid of stress, because you need some stress. Stress motivates us, stress is part of life, but not to take on so much that it doesn't get put away a little bit. And that's part of the equation. The other part of the equation, self-care, is you got to have pleasure. You got to have happiness in your life. You got to get all those endorphins into your system. If you can think about it, it's like an equation. The more happiness you get in your life, pleasure, endorphins, and the more you reduce stress to a manageable level where, yeah, I'm busy, I do a lot, that's what life should be about. And that's really the goal of self-care. And when you do that, if you can have that good, in baseball, they call that a sweet spot in a baseball bat. And that really is how you can hit home runs. If you want to hit a home run in life, you want to basically reduce the stress as much as you can and add as much pleasure and happiness as you can at the same time. You got to have both in order to feel fulfilled. You can't just manage the stress without adding the happiness in there too. And people who self-care find themselves to be more creative, more flexible, more open to change, and they problem solve better than other people who don't engage in self-care. They also regulate their emotions better. They let themselves see emotions as feedback. They process their emotions really well. And they focus on their body health and wellness. It's hard to tell your son or daughter to eat healthy if you're having unhealthy food all the time. And if you're overweight, and that's a challenge as you get older, to tell your children to respect their bodies and take care of their bodies because you don't want them to develop other illnesses as they get older. It's a hard thing, but somebody told me the body that you have as a 20-year-old is the body you're going to own as a 30-year-old, and the body as a 30-year-old is the body you're going to deal with as a 40-year-old. And impart that wisdom to your children that taking care of your body now will pay a dividend later on. People who have self-care, by the way, enjoy relationships. They receive social support in relationships, and they try to be positive and tell the people around you that you love them as much as you can. You can never tell people around you that you don't love them. You got to keep telling them all the time, and try to look at the glass half full than the glass half empty. I practice it whenever I go to a restaurant. Now they're allowed to do that. I always ask people I'm with, what did you like about the restaurant? What did you like about your meal? Because if I ask what you don't like, I'm going to get 20 complaints. They didn't like the chair. They didn't like the bread. Their food was too salty, too hot, too cold. I just ask, what did you like about the food? Like it's a rainy day. Well, what do you like about the weather today? Yeah, it's rainy. It's a little gloomy. It's a little wet and soggy. But what do you like about it? Again, what try to shift the focus and be more positive. And that's a big part of self-care. And it's also a big part of your kids. If you're constantly telling your kids what they're doing wrong, when they're in crisis, they're not going to have any confidence to deal with their crisis. You got to support positivity, especially in the relationships with your kids. We have to look at our own lives. And this is kind of our to-do list is, well, what do I need to do in my life to make myself be healthier and happier? Am I eating healthy? Am I exercising? Do I practice regular relaxation, mindfulness, meditation, yoga? Should I be in therapy to kind of sort out all the stuff that happened to me? A lot of us sadly have baggage. Do I need to get some knowledge I don't have and take an adult education class? Should I re-examine my faith and my spiritual life a little bit more and renew that in some way? Do I need to develop hobbies or get new hobbies? Would I like to travel? It doesn't have to be far. It can be just a trip someplace just to get out of my little zone to kind of see things differently. Have I spent enough time socializing with friends? Journaling, it can be really helpful, just writing down our thoughts, creativity, laughter, having a good laugh as a family. We used to have, when the kids were little, family joke time. I'm a horrible joke teller, but I would go online and find a joke and try it. Again, it creates a tone in the house. Massage, spa, shopping, healthy cooking, getting enough sleep, big factor. Reading for enjoyment, sing or listen to music. I'm a singing in the shower person, but sometimes I sing in the car to my family's unhappiness, but I do my best to keep quiet. Romance, it's still possible. Shopping, taking a hot bath, going to movies, theaters, museums. Saying no to save time for yourself. Getting clothes that's comfortable. Paying for someone to help you with the house every so often. Looking at old family photographs, it's really neat. A lot of people have tons of photos on their phone, but never put them together and sort them out. It can be kind of a nice thing. And this is a great challenge, is turn off your cell phone and emails. Don't look at them for a little while. Have cell phone or email or computer free zones. You'll find that you have more time for yourself. You can nurture yourself a little bit more beside being pulled into that world. Reconnect with friends is nice. I'm not saying it's terrible, and Facebook can be a way to reconnect with people. But again, try some cell phone free hours and times. We used to be able to do it. We used to have this thing called answering machines, and the phones do that too. So if you turn them off, the messages will still be there. Try to have quality family time and or quality parent time. Go out on a date with your spouse. Even though when you have kids, it's hard, but it's really helpful. Removing clutter and prioritize your time. All can be very helpful in terms of that self-care that you want to get back in your life to model for your children. So you've heard me talk, and I have a few more minutes left. So I know this is not a great way to end, but you finish the talk and said, it doesn't apply to me. What are the barriers? Well, these are my list of rationalizations. I think I've heard from the best. I don't have enough time. My work requirements. I'm a perfectionist. My family needs me. I have money problems. I can't find time to take care of by myself. I have no space in the house to do this. I'm too busy with appointments. It's too complicated to do self-care. It's not worth the time. I'll start tomorrow. I'm not worth it. I have things to do in the community. My house needs work. I have obligations, paying bills. I have my own emotional issues. My health, I got to be concerned to. I'm tired. And what will people think if I'm doing this? I'm going to be considered selfish. Again, these are the rationalizations. But you're worth it. You're worth it. And if not for yourself, do it for your kids. If they see you as a parent taking good care of yourself, they're going to remember that when they get older, and they're going to follow what you do rather than just what you say. That expression always comes back to bite me. It's listen to what I do, not what I say. And that's really important. And it is important for our children. And even though it's hard to do, we have to walk the talk sometimes. And that's really very important. And finally, in my rationalizations, I'm a super person. I don't need to take care of myself. I don't need self-care. I don't really know what my needs are. Self-care is narcissistic, selfish. It's a sign of weakness. I feel guilty if I take care of myself, spend time with myself. I don't have enough time. I don't put myself first. My kids are always first. I should focus on problems of the moment rather than preventing things. All these are rationalizations. You got to dig through them for the benefit of your children, because ultimately they're the most important. And ultimately we want to be able to have them ready and teach them and get past these crises, big and small, as we talked about. We want to basically show them that we're in it for the long haul with them. We're here to help them. And that's really important. And we need to keep calm first and carry on. And hopefully, as a result of this presentation, you picked up some tips and skills that you can use and that you can share with other people. But it all starts with listening. It all starts in letting your children talk, helping them learn the many steps of being independent, realizing that we all make mistakes, and you're here to help them on this tricky journey that includes a lot of bumps in the road, but we're there to help you. And that every problem seems dark today, but it gets better as time goes by. And that's what you really want to do. You want to be positive and optimistic, not painting a silver lining in every cloud type of thing, but tell them, listen, it can be really hard and it can be really tough right now, but we're here for you in the long haul, and we're going to help you. And that's what really is most important. We want to provide that hope for them and help them see that there's other solutions. Really very helpful. And thank you for this time, and hope you find this helpful. And look forward to presenting, I think, in a couple of weeks on another topic for you. Have a good evening, and thank you. Bye-bye.